So thank you for being here. So the topic of the next 25 minutes will be, well, let's say French tech, the French startup ecosystem, and the international. How much is it international? How much is it important for it to be international? What can we do together to make it more international? And we are very privileged here because you three spend a lot of time, either come from a foreign country or spend a lot of time within a foreign country. So you have a great experience to share on your motivation, why you came here, etc. So that's really the topic of the discussion. Maybe as an introduction, just a few words about La French Tech. So this initiative, La French Tech, has been launched by the government, as the Minister Le Maire said a few minutes ago. The objective of this initiative is just simple, is how to grow French startups. So there's a very interesting, promising, dynamic tech ecosystem in France, including here in Nantes. And the objective is how together we can push all those startups to make them become great leaders, great companies, and global companies. So this is our objective. And part of the issues to tackle is how do we make this ecosystem more international, either by having these startups grow international as fast as possible, and also how to attract the best talents, the best people, the best entrepreneurs from everywhere in the world. So that's the goal and the topic of our discussion. We've launched a dedicated program on that to invite, I would say, foreign entrepreneurs to launch their startup in Paris, and that's the French Tech Ticket program, and Jacklyn is part of this program. We'll talk about that in a minute. And another initiative, and I would say Réda also is an ambassador and partner of this French Tech Ticket program also. And the other program I want to mention is Reviens Léon. So Reviens Léon is a fully private initiative launched by between, I don't have the figure, but 10 or 20 French scale-ups, great startups that are going so well, including IADVIZE, which is a great startup here in Nantes. And so, Michaël, you were part of this program. You say in a minute. So, how do you see that? So, I propose as a first, maybe to start from your experience. Maybe can you tell us, a little bit about your company, what you're doing, obviously, and where you were before coming to France, and why you came to France. What were your motivation, and what are your surprises? How do you see that here? Maybe, Jacklyn, you want to start?
Sure. That's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and remember all of them.
Pick one if you want.
Okay. So my name is Jacklyn Giron. I'm one of the co-founders and developers of a data-driven training platform for runners called Smashrun. Basically, we help runners understand data they collect using big data analysis. So where I was before France? Yeah. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting story. We've actually been bootstrapping Smashrun for the past couple of years in Europe, which is extremely tricky if you're a US citizen because of the Schengen visa. So that meant we had to move a lot, and that was a bit of a problem for us. But before Europe, we were actually based in New York. But we left New York because even though 40% of our user base is in the United States, almost all of our growth was coming from Europe. So we decided to leave and move to Europe. And coincidentally, last summer, we found out about the French Tech Ticket program. And for those of you who are not familiar with the French Tech Ticket program, it's a government initiative that brings foreign entrepreneurs to Paris in an aim to help them either launch a startup or scale their startup in France. And participants in the program get capital, they get office space, you get a dedicated contact to help you through administrative hurdles while you're in France, and also you get a 3-year skills and talents visa. So for someone who had spent the last 3 years moving place to place every 3 months, that was tremendous for me. And that was part of the reason why we applied to the program, because it made a lot of sense for us to be here.
Great. Maybe Réda, and then we'll go to Michaël, about the French Tech Ticket. We've been part of these entrepreneurs in France with which we have built this program. We had early discussion together about this program, about the needs for foreign entrepreneurs to launch their startup in Paris. Can you?
Yeah, well, it was pretty interesting because the way you have created the French Tech Ticket I think it was the right way to do it, because first, before you launched it, you called several foreign entrepreneurs for lunch, and we discussed about a lot of things about what we really need to settle and create our business in France. And then you launched the French Tech Ticket, and I think that the way it has been done was really entrepreneur-centric. You have made 2 entrepreneurs presidents of the jury of the French Tech Ticket. I was one of the 2 presidents, and we had the veto right, so we could deny or accept some decisions that may have been taken by non-entrepreneur people. So I think I would give a little bit of context about who am I and why there is a great insight about what I'm saying. I was born in Morocco, and I came here for my studies, and very soon I decided to launch my business because I understood that I couldn't work for anyone. And when I launched my business, I was a student, and there was that great French administrative issue, because if you wanted to create your company, you needed your card as an entrepreneur, and if you wanted your card as an entrepreneur, you need to have a company. So it wasn't really possible. So there was a lot of things that I had to go through alone. I lost like 7 months of business because I had to go back and forth with the administration. And what you did with the French Tech Ticket is like packaging all that work I had to do alone and helping foreign entrepreneurs to do it. So I think it's one of the best initiatives you have done for foreign entrepreneurs.
You missed the opportunity to introduce yourself and Square Break. Maybe take a minute to do that.
So, introduce myself. Well, I have created several companies. I started before I finished my studies as an engineer in Lyon. I was born in Morocco. I came here at 18, and my latest ventures is called Square Break. We have a vacation rental company with hotel services. We just raised 3 million euros from Accor Hotel, and I'm also involved in helping entrepreneurs into growing their business thanks to technology. And it's pretty interesting to see how we can bring foreign talents to grow the tech ecosystem and the entrepreneur ecosystem in France.
Okay, maybe a next experience, Michaël. So this is another program. Maybe so you came back. You'll testimony to where you came back from, but tell us a little bit about your story and maybe about the Reviens Lyon program.
Yeah, sure. So hi, bonjour, good morning, everybody. So as you can guess, I have a French accent, so I'm French. I arrived in Nantes 6 months ago. I joined a wonderful company called IADVIZE, which is, for those who don't know, a conversational commerce platform that helps companies to better communicate with their customers online. Before that, so basically I was living in Europe, in Dublin. I was working at Facebook for 7 years, where I helped the company and be part of the first employees to launch a business across Europe, but specifically for France and the Benelux market. So I left France in 2002, so that was 14 years ago now. So I came back 6 months ago in Nantes, which is a city I love, by the way. I think the quality of life is just amazing. But to come back to France after so many years living abroad, it's so important to anticipate your comeback. So that's why the Reviens Lyon program, which is basically a program that helps companies that are in hypergrowth or are in scale-up phase and needs to internationalize and expand their business across the globe. They need to hire people that have this experience and these skills. So the program is basically focused on this, to communicate to the French expats, but not only French people, but also foreigners, to say, hey, wonderful things happen in France. There is a lot of jobs open in France, but also in international countries. And second objective is also to help those companies to hire people in those countries. And IADVIZE, which is part of this program, like companies like BlaBlaCar, Crédit, Sigfox, and so on. I think there is like 17, 18 startups in this program now. And the last thing for Reviens Lyon, which was very helpful for me actually, is to help me to prepare this comeback, because I tended to forget about the French administration, which is interesting, to be diplomatic, but also very time-consuming. Things like to subscribe again to the social welfare, my daughter was born in Ireland, so basically we had so many papers to translate to get the French nationality and so on. So there is so many things that you need to think about before to come back, to be ready in your day one in your new job. And Reviens Léon helped me a lot in that way to anticipate and prepare my comeback to France.
And I suppose for all the three of you, the reason why you choose to join the French tech ecosystem and come to France or come back to France are probably a mix of very personal, but also professional and business reasons. So on the business side, could you tell us why you decided maybe at that point of your career or which is different, Réda and you, Michaël, it's different time within your career. So what were your business reasons? Why France at that time, at that moment? Yeah, sure.
So, well, we applied to the French Tech Ticket Program for 3 reasons. Mainly, as I was talking about earlier, we were bootstrapping our startup by moving around Europe, and it was incredibly difficult to stay in any one place for too long because of the Schengen visa. So it's really difficult to scale a company while moving a lot. So that was one of the reasons. The second reason was we needed access to a network of mentors and startups that understood the European market. And our third reason was that Paris is a good base of operations because there's a good talent pool, there's good quality of living, there are all these tax incentives for R&D for both young and innovative companies, not to mention just the sheer number of startups that are present and startup-related events made it a really good base for us. And we also already knew that a lot of our growth was coming from Europe, so we wanted to leverage that, and that's why we decided to move over here.
For me, well, I always thought that I was born in the wrong country. When I was 11, I created my first website, and I wanted to create my first startup when I was 14. I think if I was in New York, like Jacklyn, I would have stayed in New York or maybe gone to the Silicon Valley. But the course of my activities brought me in France for my studies. And when I started creating I saw the opportunities that I don't have in Morocco. So Morocco today is like France 15 years ago. So the ecosystem is starting, but there is also not that all a freedom to do your business as you intended. It's not that structured. So for me, there is no question about returning back to Morocco. I will never come back to Morocco to do business. So why France? Why staying in France? Why not going to the Silicon Valley? So there is a bit part of a love story with France. I love France. I love the French culture. So I love Paris, the restaurants, and all that nice things that we have. And there's also another thing. I think that France is the best country to start your business. I don't say grow your business, but start it. You have, like Jacklyn said, a great talent pool. We create the best engineers in the world. We have amazing engineers. They don't cost that much. We have great social welfare. And taxes for companies that start aren't that high. Really, I don't see why we would go to the Silicon Valley and pay an engineer, an average engineer, 150,000 K just to have our team in the Silicon Valley. So I think that I will always start my business in France, maybe going to go scale in another place. But what would be interesting is just to help the French culture evolve. And that's why it's interesting to have people like Jacklyn and foreign entrepreneurs coming in France, bringing their cultural differences and nurturing the diversity in France. Because I think that I consider myself as a French entrepreneur. We French entrepreneurs, we have the responsibility to make them feel at home. Like some Easy things, just when we have some foreign people with us, just speak English, don't speak French, because they have to feel included. So this is this cultural pain point in France, is that when you're French, you try to assimilate the person in front of you, and you don't try to adapt. There's a great example of a friend of mine, Meryl Job, who has her company, and her rule is everyone in the company speaks English. French people and also foreign people, and she hired 50-50 French and foreign people. So I think that this is our responsibility to transform our entrepreneurial culture.
Maybe Michaël, on your, well, the reason why you came to France, I mean, on the business perspective, and also, well, Réda, you've anticipated on my next question, which is what is your look on the tech ecosystem, the culture, how it is moving?
Yeah, so when I was working before at Facebook, I was managing a partnership with the ecosystem for the French company. So I had a good overview of what's going on in France, especially the ad tech ecosystem, which is evolving, growing so fast. So one of the reasons why I came back to France, two main reasons. One is after so many years living abroad, you feel that sometimes that you need to get closer to your friends, family, because time is flying, and sometimes you feel like I'm not spending enough time, you know, with the people I should spend with. And second reason is also the professional reason. I wanted to join a company that is growing fast, that is also visionary in terms of expanding the business across the globe. So this international element component was very important for me in my career. As that's something I found at IADVIZE. I think it's across 175 employees. We have like now 10 nationalities in the office. So when you walk in the office, you don't only hear French, but you hear only English, Spanish, Italian. And that's something that makes the experience as an employee very interesting, and you feel like in an international environment. And sometimes you can also forget that you are based in Nantes, you know. So those two key elements helped me to make my decision to come back to France. But I believe also the French ecosystem is growing so fast now. So many companies that are very interesting to join or to build. So I think there is a very good opportunity for the French startup ecosystem, at least.
I think, to me, that's maybe a starting point for us at La French Tech. I mean, the ecosystem has to be very, as Réda mentioned, it has to be international, because if we want to create, you know, global leaders, you have to hire the best talents. And if you want to develop everywhere in Europe and everywhere in the world, you have to hire people that know first how to grow business. And Michaël, you saw that at Facebook. How is it to grow, hyper-grow? So how do you manage that? So that's key skills that we have to bring also to France. And also, if you want to develop your business in foreign countries, you need people to know how to do that also. So these talents have to be very open. My question, maybe, what are your, as we have the privilege to have you, which have some kind of also external look on the ecosystem. So I think, yes, we're pushing it a lot to go more international. Maybe what are your views on the ecosystem, its improvement, and also what is great as an experience being here within the French tech ecosystem, and maybe what could be improved also? What can you do to be even better now? Hey, Jacklyn, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, well, startups don't need much. Like, we might seem high maintenance, but there's very little that we need before entering an ecosystem. Startups need three things. We need access to capital. We need to be able to hire local talent, and we need press. That's really it. That's the formula for every startup. And it is incredibly difficult to achieve all three when you do not speak the language in the country you decided to move your company to. So I think that as it stands, you know, it's hard to pursue funding without introductions and also without really fully understanding the landscape. And granted, there's not as much funding necessarily here compared to Silicon Valley, but because we're in this early stage where investment activity is growing, it's a lot like being a big fish in a small pond. as opposed to being in Silicon Valley where you're just a tiny fish in a really large pond, which is part of the reason why we moved here. So, but I think introductions or just creating more transparency in that ecosystem would encourage foreign entrepreneurs to maybe, come over here. I think in terms of hiring talent in France, a lot of foreign startups have this concept that if you hire local talent, it's like entering, a marriage. It's incredibly difficult to break up for some and impossible for others. But I don't actually think that's true. For instance, I know there's like trial periods. So I think it's just the concept that entrepreneurs are coming in with, and that's, that creates friction. And the last thing, press. So in the US, we know all the major press publications, and it's really, really difficult to land any one of the big, names. When a foreign startup decides to move to France, it's a lot more difficult because you don't really know what those publications are, and also you're going to be pitching them in English, or maybe try and have someone translate the pitch for you in French. And I think that both young startups, and startups that are growing really want press coverage. So I really think that if the ecosystem addresses those three different things, that startups will come.
Concerning the ecosystem, I think that we are going in the right direction for the internationalization. But I think that the French ecosystem needs more cash, more smart money. And this is not about how to bring foreign talents, but I think that people that do exits in France, they shouldn't be taxed as they are taxed today, because they need to keep their money to invest in the right companies. BPI is doing a great job, but I think that investing in startups should be the job of other entrepreneurs that have succeeded in their companies and by selling it and making a lot of money, and just putting that money in other startups. I think that's the issue. We have a great issue of funding in France. So when you meet VCs and you want to raise money, they don't have the same cash availability, so they try to make sure investments. We have more seed funds being created, so it's a good thing that is happening. But I think that we need to leave the entrepreneurs alone and leave them with their money and let them invest it in startups. I think that would be it. I think it's the only thing that we miss in France.
I think just one way. We know on a good way because the VC investment in France has nearly doubled last year. So it went 100% growth, which is good. I hope we're on the right way. Michaël? Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's kind of virtuous cycle where company needs to hire talents, but for this they need money, and they need to communicate better across the globe as well. So I think from my point of view, definitely we need to get more VCs in France, not only French VCs, but also foreign VCs that can invest in the startup ecosystem. And I believe that by attracting, but we need to attract those VCs as well, which is a challenge also for everyone, not only the startups, the French tech, and so on. So by attracting those VCs, I think that will help to raise more our visibility to the startup ecosystem in France, to get those talents that are living abroad, based in Paris, Nantes, or whatever. So I really believe this is the fundamentals to be able to grow the ecosystem. But when I look in 2002, when I left France, there was some startups, that's right, but there was no structure, there was no support. And I'm now since I'm back and I'm more on the ground now, and I can see the energy, the skills we have, the entrepreneurship, the inspiration we get some entrepreneurs in France. I really believe the potential is there. So just now we need to get those entrepreneurs to build amazing things in the coming years, to get at the stage where UK is, or the US are, or even Asia. but I think the potential is here, definitely.
Well, great. I think we're running out of time. I don't know if Adrien is still here, but I have a proposition maybe for the organizers of the website. Maybe you could come back next year and tell us. I mean, you have spent one more year in France and see how things have evolved, and if we are saying the same things, and if you are happy to be either join France or back in France. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been a great
Thank you.
privilege to have you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.